I thank you for this opportunity. You know, one of the greatest challenges for us at the Ontario Agricultural College at the University of Guelph is recruiting students into our agriculture and food programs. And it always seems like an enigma to us who are inside the industry because we understand very well how dynamic it is, how big it is, how diverse it is, how exciting it is. And so we can't understand then why people aren't automatically drawn to it. But at the same time, in that work, we come to recognize that, in fact, there are a lot of misperceptions about the industry, and there are a lot of people who really don't know that much about it. They have notions about agriculture and farming and the food sector, but they haven't had a chance to really understand it more deeply, and then more importantly, to see their place possibly in that sector, looking at their own future, what their own interests are. And it is a sector that has gone through an enormous amount of change, as does everything in our society. So if we go to the next slide, we see that the vast majority of the food companies and the agribusiness companies, one, prefer to have students who go through programs that provide them formal background in agriculture and food. And secondly, the majority of those companies, either on the food side or the agriculture side, have a hard time finding the employees they need. So they're aggressively, actively looking for people, but they can't find them. So this spells a real opportunity, but it's difficult. If we go to the next slide, shows what might be a notion about farming and agriculture. So this is a picture from when I was in Manitoba. And it's a lovely picture, but there's not an awful lot of people in that picture, and it's not representing a lot of different kinds of jobs. It's representing a very narrow picture of agriculture. The reality of the agriculture and food sector is much different than that. And the next slide emphasizes that. This is a collage that I put together when I was presenting to some prospective students, and they said, well, what does that sector look like? And I thought, well, that's a good question. So I got together a bunch of pictures of the kinds of interactions, things that our students are up to when they're in our programs, and the kinds of things they're working on when they're coming out of our program. So it's high tech, it's global, it's business, it's technology, it's laboratory, it's field, it's international, it's local, and it's everything in between. So this is the picture of the agriculture and food sector, and it's a diverse collage with lots of different opportunities. And then if we go to the next slide, if we think about companies that employ our students, I also put together this collage when people were saying, well, you know, what companies employ your students? And I said, oh, that's a good question. I'll just, you know, spend a half an hour putting together some of them. So this is a sample of companies that employ our students. And what you'll notice, first of all, is that there's a lot of different companies. This isn't a complete list by any stretch. And what you might also notice is that there's big companies, multinational companies on here. There's small companies. There are local companies. There are international companies. And then there's a real diversity of kinds of companies, and many companies you might not expect, like Honda or Kinross Gold or the Toronto Blue Jays or Mars, which is one of the world's largest pet food companies, by the way. So there's an awful lot of opportunity here. I have Linamar on here. Linamar, which is a local company here in Guelph, has an agriculture sector. They bought MacDon in Winnipeg. There are so many different kinds of companies, so many different kinds of opportunities. If whatever your aspirations are, if you want to work locally, yes. If you want to work internationally, yes. If you want to be involved in trading, Yes. If you want to be involved in high technology, yes. If you want to be involved in social enterprise, yes. Anything and everything. If you want to be involved in government policy, yes. International policy, the FAO, yes. Any and all of these things are possible. But this isn't the picture we normally see for the agriculture and food sector. We normally see a much, much narrower picture. But the reality is that the demand is so high because the tentacles of where the agriculture and food sector touch are so broad and so many. So this is something I use as a recruiting slide to say, you know, we have a lot of employers who need you, and if you're thinking about your future, maybe pick the sector and then go into programs, and then you can start to pick your future within that sector.
So, Dr. Rene, I feel like this is an excellent opportunity to ask this question. Are there jobs available for students graduating from non-agriculture programs like environmental?
Yes, yes, there are. I mean, you might notice that one of the companies on here is Stantec, which is a major environmental consulting company. Yes, absolutely. You know, increasingly there are positions around sustainability in any and all large companies. In fact, we have a program. We have a number of programs in environmental science. We have a School of Environmental Sciences embedded in our college, and so yes, for sure there are opportunities. You don't have to have a degree from our university. If you have a diploma or degree in environmental sciences, I would encourage you to look in the agriculture and food sector because I think you will find opportunities. Yeah. Great. So kinds of agricultural careers that are out there, and in these following slides, we'll just go through some lists, and I'm just a little bit aware of time. I have to kind of move along. These are some examples, top 10 Canadian industry types. You can see a listing there. One that I'm going to point out that also a lot of people don't think about is finance, banking, insurance, and real estate. The largest single subsector employing our students is finance and banking. And people are often surprised by that. But the reality is that finance and banking, because the agriculture and food sector is a big sector, there's an awful lot of employment related to finance and banking to service the agriculture and food sector. And so often those employers are looking for students who have some sort of expertise and background in the agriculture and food sector. So that's something I wanted to draw people's attention to. If we go to the next slide. In-demand careers, there's a whole range. Some of those might be unexpected, including agriculture educators, for example, but there are a whole range there. I think what's unexpected, to my mind anyways, in this slide as well, is the kind of breadth of range of careers that's it here in terms of discipline backgrounds. We have a whole range of programs in OAC that cover so many different disciplines, from social sciences, economics, through to hard sciences, including environmental sciences, agronomy, animal sciences, and everything in between. So, you know, if you're interested in chemistry, microbiology, physics, accounting, economics, social enterprise, social sciences, you can apply all of those interests in this sector. Go to the next slide. Emerging careers. As with every sector, agriculture and food is also going through the data revolution. The interesting thing about the application of the data revolution to agriculture and food is that agriculture not only impacts the environment, but for the vast majority of Canadians, in fact, the vast majority of the people in the world, agriculture is the environment. More than 90% of the people in the world live in farmed watersheds. And so if you want to make an impact on the environment, our environment, the environment we live in, you can make that biggest impact through agriculture. And that includes not only adaptation to, but mitigation of climate change. And so the data revolution in terms of fundamentally changing the sustainability, our sustainability on this planet is most aptly applied through agriculture and food, through the application of advanced technologies. So there is a very special nexus of opportunities here.
So one question has been asked is, what kind of data would you be analyzing in agriculture and food, and what exactly does that mean?
So the kind of data we'd be looking at, there's a very broad range. On the animal side, for example, animal welfare and care is another area where there's been a tremendous growth. We have an awful lot of cutting edge work in our college, in the Ontario Veterinary College, in ag and vet colleges across the world, in developing biomonitoring capabilities to be able to, in real time, monitor very intensely and acutely the health of animals and their welfare. And in fact, the advances in monitoring of health, eventually of humans, real-time monitoring of health in humans, is happening first in animal sciences. And that's an exciting, very exciting area. It leads us to be able to take better care of animals and to more acutely understand when they are healthy and happy and when they are not healthy and not happy. So that's just one example. But the other data would include everything from much better understanding of the health of our soils, and there's a whole bunch of metrics where we are developing monitoring systems. Water quality, not only surface water, but groundwater. As I said, most people live in farmed watersheds, and so impacting the footprint of agriculture impacts our water quality. The same is true of air quality and carbon emissions. Agriculture is potentially the most important sector in terms of recapturing carbon from the atmosphere and sequestering it. If you remember grade 6, photosynthesis is carbon capture using sunlight energy and plants as a water pump. So, so data around our ability to do that, the stability of captured carbon. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but those are a few examples. But almost anything you can think of that you might be interested in, there are endeavors around creating ways of capturing data and endeavors in ways of using that data to make progress. So I think this is really more a question for Catherine, but what can you do if you do have an interest? I mean, I would go to agcareers.com, careersandfood.com, look at how they can help to guide what possibilities are there for you. I think I need to keep moving along here, just aware of time. Food careers, you know, I've been talking about global ag and food sector together, but if we're looking specifically more on the food side, so not only outside the farm gate, but through to processing of food and delivery, logistics, etc., there are a whole range of things. And again, there's a theme here. And the theme is that there are such a range of disciplines required. So often in high school, and I know when I was in high school, it was about, you know, what are you good at? What are you interested in? Do you like math? Do you like biology? Do you like, you know, economics? And it wasn't so much about what sector you were going to work in, but it was about application of your interests and your skills. You can apply any of your interests and skills to the agriculture and food sector, and I think that's what we're trying to get across with some of these slides. So if I skip to the next, what kind of background do you need? This just re-emphasizes what I was just saying. Any interest, any background is an avenue into the sector. So why should I consider a career in agriculture and food? Just reiterating some of the points I made. it's a constantly growing, non-optional, very resilient sector, high tech, high growth, and increasingly high tech, high growth. It's also at a point in time through the data revolution where it's going to grow and change in ways like never before. And so it really spells opportunity. And I encourage people to consider it, to ask more questions, to come visit us, to visit careersinfood.com and agcareers.com as well.
One of the reasons I think we spoke about and why we really wanted you to speak today is that anytime we have interacted with you as a business, you are always so collaborating. We recognize that you represent and have the University of Guelph hat on, but are often doing things for the betterment of the industry as a whole. So for example, Durham College has an amazing food and farming program with a horticulture focus. You had mentioned that not only do you look at educational programs that the University of Guelph offers at your Ridgetown campus, the University of Guelph campus, and so on, but you're talking to groups across Canada to make sure that we have the same message in trying to attract youth into agriculture and food. So given we have quite a diverse audience here today, could you give us an example of someone who has been successful and maybe started at the grassroots side of things, but perhaps has experience in both agriculture and food in a career aspect? And I'm sorry, I'm kind of catching you off guard, but that's a question that came in, and I thought that that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important question. We track our applications in terms of postal codes, for example, and we are now at the point where more than 2/3 of our applications come from urban postal codes, which means that this isn't about people who've grown up on a farm or even people who are rural. This is about opportunities, and the fact of the matter is that increasingly the jobs in this sector are in urban settings, and sometimes very dense urban settings. And so, I saw one of the questions was, would I be working in an office or would I be working on a farm or in the field? It's up to you. If you're somebody who wants to work in the field and be outside, there are opportunities like that. If you're somebody that wants to work, on the 50th floor of a high-rise in that sort of setting, there are those opportunities. Somebody that always wanted to be in a lab and wants to work in a lab, there are those opportunities as well. But I'm trying to think of a very specific, like one student example of somebody who didn't come from a farm. Well, a colleague of mine grew up in Ottawa, zero farm background. Her father was an architect, and I'm not even sure how she came to the college. Never did ask that story. Somehow ended up at the college. Always had an interest in biology and genetics. Studied undergraduate, went on to do a PhD at another institution, and is currently a bean breeder. She breeds dry beans in Saskatoon. She's become globally known for breeding dry beans. So dry beans are things like kidney beans, pinto beans, navy beans, which make baked beans. Extraordinarily important protein source, and increasingly so as people are increasingly interested in plant-based proteins. Also an extremely important crop in terms of not only First Nations and cultural heritage, one of the Three Sisters, for example, but also a very important crop globally in terms of what people grow around the world as a protein source, especially in Central and South America, where dry beans, Physiolus vulgaris, are a primary nutrition source. So there's an example of somebody, no farm background, interested in genetics and biology, translated that to a career in plant breeding, where she has not only an impact on Canada's economy, but an impact on the world. So there's an example.
So that's great, and a great example. This last question I think is interesting because this person says, I feel that the financial reward aspect matters to many young students who might be considering the agriculture and food industry. Is there opportunity for lucrative salaries in the field of work of agriculture industry, or what does agriculture and food have to offer when it comes to total compensation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because it's a very, very large and diverse sector, you know, the easy answer for me to give is anything's possible. It depends on who you are and what you want. But it is a very, very large sector, which means there's an awful lot of money in it, locally, nationally, and globally. And what that means is there's an opportunity to make a lot of money. But it depends on who you are and what you want to do. But yes, if you want to make really good money and make a lot of money, that is 100% possible in the agriculture and food sector. How you do that, you know, you could pursue the corporate approach and work